As months passed after Archie's birth, something inside the palace shifted. The warmth that once welcomed Meghan began to fade into polite distance. Meetings felt colder, conversations shorter, smiles tighter. It wasn't hostility, not directly, but a quiet exclusion, subtle and unmistakable. Meghan noticed the way courtiers spoke more to Harry than to her. The way her suggestions at charity meetings were politely dismissed, then later reintroduced by others as new ideas. She told herself not to take it personally, but deep down, she felt the slow ache of being misunderstood. Newspapers began whispering about tensions between the Sussexes and the Cambridges. The truth was simpler: two couples living under different expectations, two women judged by impossible standards. Yet the press didn't want truth, they wanted stories. Rift in the palace. The headlines screamed. Harry tried to shield Meghan, Buddha too was caught between love and duty, between the woman he loved and the family he'd always known. The bond between Harry and William had always been sacred, forged by loss, strengthened by their mother's memory. But as Meghan entered Harry's life, that bond began to strain under the weight of the world's scrutiny. The press framed every silence as rivalry, every disagreement as betrayal. William warns Harry to slow down, they wrote. Harry feels abandoned. Some of it had truth, but only in fragments. Harry adored his brother, yet he felt a growing distance. William's path was duty, Harry's was heart. Meghan, sensitive to the tension, tried to mend it with kindness. She sent notes, reached out, invited Kate to spend time together. But within the rigid walls of the palace, emotion was a language few spoke openly. What Harry saw as love, others saw as rebellion. Slowly, the brothers' paths began to diverge, one toward the throne, the other toward freedom. And though neither wished it, the space between them widened, like the quiet stretch of ocean between two ships that once sailed side by side. Inside the palace, Meghan's world grew smaller. Her friends back in America were now an ocean away. Phone calls were monitored, visits limited. Even within the royal circle, her every word could become a headline. Trust no one, an advisor once told her. Even kindness can be quoted. The isolation was unbearable. She began keeping a journal, quiet pages filled with gratitude, sorrow, and resolve. I'm still me, she wrote one night, just harder to find. The tabloids continued their assault, publishing half-truths, twisting her expressions into arrogance, her compassion into manipulation. One day, she read that her staff called her demanding. The truth was, she simply wanted things done well. But in the royal world, competence could look like defiance. Her warmth, once her strength, was now seen as a flaw. Meghan found herself performing a role within a role. A duchess in public, a woman searching for herself in private. By late 2019, the pressure had become unbearable. During an interview in South Africa, a journalist asked Meghan a simple question: "Are you okay?" She paused, smiled politely, then whispered, "Thank you for asking, not many people have." Her eyes glistened, her voice trembled, and the world saw, perhaps for the first time, the depth of her pain. Millions of women watching, especially those who had once endured judgment in silence, felt her words pierce their hearts. But instead of compassion, some papers mocked her vulnerability. Too emotional, they wrote. Not royal enough. Harry was furious, yet helpless against the tide. In private, Meghan told him the truth. I just can't live like this anymore. That moment changed everything. For the first time, Harry realized this wasn't about titles or duty. It was about survival. Their love, once a storybook dream, had become their lifeline. In the weeks that followed, conversations turned into plans. Late at night, after Archie was asleep, Harry and Meghan would sit at the kitchen table, laptops open, papers scattered. We can build a new life, she said. We can still serve, just differently. They drafted ideas, read letters, explored options. Could they step back from royal duties but still support the Queen? Could they create a balance between duty and independence? The answers were never clear, but their decision was. They could no longer stay. The palace reacted with shock, then silence, then politics. Meetings were called, statements prepared. But for Harry and Meghan, it was no longer about approval, it was about peace. "I don't want history to repeat itself," Harry said quietly one night. Meghan reached across the table, took his hand, and smiled. "Then let's write a new one." January 2020. The royal family gathered at Sandringham Estate, the Queen's private retreat, for what would become one of the most emotional meetings in recent royal history. Outside, icy winds swept through the Norfolk countryside. Inside, the air was colder still. Harry sat with his father and brother, explaining the decision he and Meghan had made. They wanted to step back, not step away. They sought a life of service, not submission. The Queen listened silently, her expression unreadable. William's voice, though calm, carried an edge of hurt. "We're a family," he said quietly. "This feels like walking away." Harry tried to explain that it wasn't abandonment, it was survival. "I have to protect my wife, my son," he said, his voice breaking. The conversation lasted hours. When I attended, nothing was the same. Outside, photographers waited like shadows in the snow. Inside, Harry walked out of the room with tears in his eyes. Love for his family still burned strong, but duty and understanding no longer walked hand in hand. In the weeks that followed, statements were issued, protocols debated, and final arrangements made. Harry and Meghan would no longer use their royal titles. Their funding from the monarchy would end. They would repay the public money used to renovate their home. For Meghan, it was both liberating and heartbreaking. "I never wanted to quit," she told a friend, "I just wanted to breathe." When the official announcement was released, the world erupted. Some called it betrayal, others called it courage. Through it all, Meghan remained poised, silent, graceful, and heartbreakingly dignified. On their last official engagement, she wore a radiant emerald dress that caught the light like hope itself. As she and Harry stepped into the rain that night, cameras flashed, capturing what would become one of the most iconic images of their lives. The couple walking through a downpour, smiling, the storm around them sparkling with light. It was as if the heavens themselves were giving them a standing ovation. They left quietly, boarding a plane with Archie in their arms. As the aircraft lifted through grey London skies, Meghan looked out the window one last time, the land of crowns and castles fading beneath the clouds. Ahead was Canada, a place of peace and distance. Their new home was modest by royal standards, surrounded by tall pines and ocean mist. There were no paparazzi waiting at the gates, no staff bowing at the door. Meghan cooked breakfast, walked with Archie along the beach, and felt sunlight without scrutiny for the first time in years. Harry split wood for the fireplace, his laughter echoing across the water. Freedom was strange, unfamiliar, but it was theirs. Yet even there, the echoes of the past followed them. The world still watched, still debated, still judged. But for the first time, they could close the door and choose silence. And in that silence, they began to heal. In California, under golden sunlight instead of gray skies, Meghan rediscovered herself. No longer bound by palace rules, she began speaking again, about kindness, equality, compassion. Her words were calm but powerful, carrying the poise of someone who had survived fire and refused to be burned. Together, she and Harry founded Archewell, a platform built not on royal duty, but on shared humanity. Critics called them opportunists. Admirers called them brave. But Meghan no longer needed to defend herself. She had learned that silence could be strength, not the silence of suppression, but of purpose. When she spoke about her struggles in later interviews, shedded so not with bitterness, but with reflection. "I just wanted to be heard," she said softly. For countless women watching around the world, her story was no longer a scandal, it was a mirror. Years later, when Meghan looked back on her time in the palace, she no longer saw it as tragedy, but as transformation. The fairy tale had not ended, it had evolved. Shahad entered the palace as an actress, learned to survive as a duchess, and emerged as a woman of her own making. For Harry and Meghan, the truest crown was not gold but grace, the courage to live honestly, love deeply, and walk away from what no longer brought peace. They still honored the Queen, still spoke of family with love, but now on their own terms. In their California garden, Archie played freely, his laughter mingling with birdsong. Meghan smiled, sunlight dancing on her hair. Shahad traded duty for authenticity, loneliness for freedom. And as the camera of history turned its quiet lens toward her, Meghan Markle stood not as a duchess or an exile, but as a woman who dared to choose her own story.